Hello, everyone. My name is Greg Other, and this is a Peace for Parents event. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm going to share my screen at this point so that you can see what we're going to be talking about. So, Peace for Parents is an event sponsored by U of L Health Peace Hospital. This one today is on what parents need to know, tips for parenting elementary school children. Topics we're going to cover today include social media, bullying, mental health, adversity and resilience, and discipline. There's going to be a time for questions at the end as well. Start with social media. One of the things we're going to talk about is the impacts of social media. When we talk social media, a lot of times all we talk is the bad impacts of social media, but social media, it's a mixed bag. There's good impacts, there's bad impacts, and it's using social media in a way that works for everyone that's most important. Some of the good impacts of social media include self-esteem, opportunity for collaboration and tolerance, such as what we're doing right here, Zoom, and being on like a telehealth type meeting are all great ways to use social media. Communication, especially for folks that have transportation barriers. Health promotions, opportunities to do this. We're able to talk about services, able to talk about various topics to help everyone have a little better information and understanding. And then access to vital health information. Let's talk a little bit about connectedness and self-confidence. It's a little bit of information. Basically, it's pretty straightforward. It talks about that children and teens especially, they're going to tell you that social media makes them feel more included and confident rather than excluded and insecure. They may have some negative experiences with social media, but all in all, taken as a whole, social media provides more good than bad as defined by teens. Let's start a little bit with the problems of social media. One of the problems is that it takes away face-to-face communication. Part of what we're dealing with right now during the pandemic is not having as much face-to-face time. Kids not having as much access to teachers, not as much access to coaches, not as much access to just getting hugs from people that they know care about them and that are safe adults, whether it's family and whatnot. Educational consequences, like what we're seeing as far as like the concerns of learning loss for some folks not being able to access NTI and other people having better access. One of the problems with social media can be a reduction in amount of sleep, and that means maybe you're using your social media device at night. You're on Facebook or whatever at night, and you're not getting the amount of sleep you need. One of the things we talk about has been talked about is called Facebook depression, mental health consequences, and this can be if people are talking about you on Facebook, or if you're excluded and you're not involved in the conversation, that can be part of it. Anxiety and distractions regarding drama, who's talking to who's not being included, all that stuff that creates drama. And then cyberbullying, which is a type of bullying that's more prevalent these days. As parents, when we were kids, cyberbullying was kind of a new thing. Now, cyberbullying is kind of the norm. We're seeing that as maybe the number one way kids are experiencing bullying, especially during the pandemic. Potential exposure to trauma. They may read something that they didn't necessarily need to read. Sexting and legal issues, pictures that are sent, pictures that are asked for them to send, privacy issues, giving away like, hey, we're not going to be home this weekend, we're going on a trip. Well, then if the wrong person sees that, they'd be like, oh, well, your house is vacant and someone might break in. So those kinds of privacy issues that sometimes people don't think about. And then the viral challenges about, internet security and whatnot, and could you get a virus and could that mess up your data? So let's start with some basics. Important things to tell your children about social media. First and foremost is be nice. A lot of this stuff is recorded. A lot of this stuff is out there forever. So be nice. Very few times are people upset about how they acted on social media, and very few times does it come back to bite them if they were nice. So tell your kids, be nice. Social media is a platform to be nice. If you have something not nice to say, don't say it. Definitely don't say it on social media. And then don't friend strangers. And this kind of speaks for itself around safety, but don't friend strangers. Make sure that they know and they hear that loud and clear from you. Make sure they don't just assume your kids know this. Make sure that you tell them, don't friend strangers. One of the other things we talk about can be done is making a contract with your child about the use of social media. What goes into that contract? What does that mean to have a contract? Well, a contract can talk about what sites you're going to be able to use, what kind of parental controls you're going to set up, that you have access to their social media accounts at all times, that you can look at their accounts, who they're friending, who they're talking to, who they're communicating with, that you're in control of that. Also, about the sleep issues we talked about earlier, a plan that electronic devices go to bed when the child goes to bed. And they go to bed in a different room, in a different place, and that's where they get charged. My recommendation is in the parent's bedroom, so the child, you know where the child's not coming to get it. We're going to switch a little bit into bullying, one of our other topics. What is bullying? A bully is an individual who likes to seek control, dominate, and terrorize another individual. Control and power are a big part of bullying, and it's what separates it from like normal teasing. The difference between mean behavior and bullying is that normal peer conflict is when two individuals with equal power or status get into an argument or fight. It's more accidental, it doesn't happen frequently, it's not targeted, and it's not necessarily serious. Usually it's event focused where the two of them are mad about something that happened, and then they can get over it quickly and they can become friends. But those definitions are pretty important, especially the piece about power. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. Part of the definition of bullying is it's very fluid at this point because of societal norms and technological changes. So technology is changing daily. And what sites kids are using and what access kids have, it changes, and then that changes what bullying really looks like. But it's always serious when it's bullying, it's repetitive, and there's that unequal amount of power, and that's important. Key elements: aggression with the intent to commit harm. So you're trying to cause upsetness, hurt, different kinds of emotional issues to someone when there's a bullying event. There is that power differential. One child has more power, one child has more power over the peer group. They can push the envelope for the child who's being bullied. And then it's repetition. They're bullying over the same issue over and over, or they're picking the same child to bully consistently. And then there's a negative impact, even if that's not the intent. Meaning, sometimes kids might not realize what they're doing is bullying to hurt somebody, but if there's a negative impact, even if they're not trying to bully the person, they just think they're teasing, that's bullying. Because if you're causing a negative impact, you're hurting someone emotionally, that is the definition of bullying. One of the ways we prevent bullying is to talk about friendship and how do you become friends and how do we get along with each other. So preventing bullying is about teaching children how to get along well with others by showing empathy, respect, and care. So active listening, good listening skills, teaching your kids how to ask good questions, teach them how to have a good conversation with somebody, how to be interested in someone else's life, how to show support when someone's struggling. Those kinds of empathic responses are keys to positive friendship. Being involved in activities and events and a variety of different activities so that they can understand and have admiration for different skills and different skill sets, different points of view. That will help them to engage in a wide variety of friends and have a richer, fuller life. Sorry, pushed the wrong button. Sorry about that. So another big piece of this is about navigating difficult emotions and transitions. So elementary school is a huge part of transitions in life. You know, the first transition starts with they leave the home 24 hours a day and they are, oh, now I'm in school. Then they transitioned back to now I don't get to go to school and I'm doing NTI. So all of our elementary schools kids are right now back home doing NTI, and they're going to have to learn to transition again back into a classroom at some point in the future. And when that happens, it's going to be, well, where do I fit in? Some of these kids that were my friends, well, maybe they've got different social groups now and they've been hanging out because they live close to each other in a neighborhood. So we're not as close as friends as we used to be when we were in school. So there's going to be some changes as far as social organization, peer groups, and navigating those transitions and helping your child be prepared to deal with those transitions is going to be important. Other parts of mental health with kiddos involve anxiety, depression, and stress. Kids show it behaviorally and physically. What it means is they don't necessarily have the words to say, hey, I'm sad, or I'm upset, or I'm hurt, or I'm angry. They just act out. A lot of times they act aggressively. A lot of times they act in certain ways that looks like, oh, they're hyper, or oh, they're whatever, which could get them labeled with a mental illness, even if it's not necessarily a mental illness. Some of the more extreme cases you see in enuresis and caprices. That's where kids have issues with going to the bathroom. Insomnia, or issues with sleep. Coughing, stomach problems. We call those somatic issues. Headaches, where the child just doesn't feel good. And that could be they're dealing with stress, whether it's a home situation, whether it's a peer situation, where it's an academic problem they're dealing with. And then they show these stresses and anxieties based on their developmental level and based on the rules in their family. Some families, it's very much okay to talk about stress and how you're feeling. And other families, families don't really have a lot of conversation about that. So paying attention to your child and just being able to pick up on some of their verbal and their nonverbal behavior can be very important with helping your child deal with anxiety and stress. So responding to anxiety, what can parents do about that? Well, one of the things you can do is you can validate and normalize the feelings. Some words for that are, it's all right to feel sad. It's all right to feel ashamed. It's all right to feel hurt. It's all right to feel lonely. And another piece is, you're not alone. I'm in this with you. I'm here to listen, care about you. It's important not to say you don't feel that way or anything that tells the child how they're supposed to feel. You don't know how the child's feeling. Your job is to validate how they're feeling, and that's their experience. They may be able to develop some resilience, which we'll talk about later, that'll help them get through and work past some of the feelings they're currently feeling. But validating how they're really feeling in the moment is important. So they learn to trust you, and they learn that they can talk to you. If you shut them down, the next time they're having an emotion that they don't know how to deal with, they're not going to go to you for support, because they're going to feel like you shut them down. So responding to anxiety, parents help their kids by providing stability, having an ordered home, having some rules, having boundaries, knowing what time you go to bed, knowing what time you wake up, knowing the order of everything in the day, from brushing your teeth to getting dressed to getting on the bus, or logging into your NTI, or this is when we eat lunch, and this is when we do family activities. And then being a good filter to the world, helping them understand that there's a variety of people and experiences, and helping them see the world through that lens. I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about adversity and resilience. I want to make sure we get to all these topics. So adversity, there's a really great study that's called the ACEs study. It's called the Adverse Childhood Experience. Now, it talks about some pretty high level adversity issues. It basically talks about 10 adversity issues that I'll be talking about here in a minute. And it studied the outcomes of a large group of people. Over 17,000 people participated in this study. And they followed them longitudinally, which is over a big part of their lifetime. And there's actually still part of that study going on today to figure out what does it mean if you've had a bunch of different adverse experiences in your life, and what does that mean for your health outcomes? So that's the basis for the ACEs study. So there's 10 ACEs we talked about, and you get a point for each one of these ACEs or adverse experiences that you've experienced. So there's 5 personal ones, which is emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional neglect, physical neglect. I think those are all fairly self-explanatory. And then there's 5 related to other family members. Was there divorce or separation in the family? Was there domestic violence, or was someone treated violently? Was there substance misuse, alcoholism, maybe other drugs? Household member with mental illness, or an incarcerated household member, or a absent household member. So you get points for those 10 things. Each of those that have occurred to you, you get a point for. So once you get your score, then everybody that did this study, they figured out that you had a score between 0 and 10. And what they found is that folks that had higher ACEs scores had a lot of different medical issues. So childhood trauma, the ACEs don't just affect one social economic group. They don't affect people who don't have health insurance, people who do have health insurance. This is across ages and across groups of folks. If the more trauma, the more different types of trauma you had, the more at risk you are for social, emotional, and physical problems. And this was studied and found true across the ACEs study. Some of the things they studied were that folks that had a higher number of ACEs, that was reliable in showing that you were going to have potential issues with alcohol misuse, COPD or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, depression, lots of different things, liver disease, poor work performance, issues maintaining employment, unintended pregnancies, smoking, and even early death. So lots of different issues were affected by this, and they were able to study. So that's kind of a gloom and doom picture. And then I want to change that to, that's a lot about the adversity that we face. And there's those real high level pieces of adversity. And no matter how hard those were, they found, you know what, there are some things that provide hope, even if you have these 10 very difficult ACEs. And those things are resilience factors, things that can be done to help our bodies and our minds become healthy. We can do mindfulness exercises, good nutrition, adequate sleep, and healthy social interactions, just to name a few. So ACEs do not account for positive experiences in early life that can help build resilience and protection. They only account for the negative things. So what they found is that people who have family members that love them, a teacher that they have a strong bond with, trusted family and friends, just strong bonds with people that make them feel supported and loved, that affects their outcomes and can kind of counteract some of the negative effects of the adverse childhood experiences. It's also important that some people, for everyone, to develop skills such as asking for help, developing relationships, having a positive attitude, listening to feelings. These things can help you improve your situation in your life. One of the things the ACEs study showed us is that resilience is the best medicine. Resilience is not a trait that people either have or don't have. It involves behaviors, thoughts, and actions that anyone can learn. I think that's very important. So it's not a trait that someone's born with. It's not like you have brown hair or blonde hair. It's a skill set that you can develop, where you can learn to adapt. You can learn to bounce back from difficult life experiences. And people can demonstrate this at any age. You can learn how to face adverse situations, see the positive side of the strengths that can come from it, and continue on. However, being resilient doesn't mean that a person's not going to have difficulty or distress. You may have some ups and downs in life, and those are very normal. Emotional pain is common for people when they suffer a major adversity or trauma. Folks that have never experienced those kinds of adversities or trauma can actually even be at more risk because they don't know how they're going to respond when adversity hits. Folks that have experienced some adversity or some trauma, they've developed that resilience. They've developed those skills. They know, hey, when these bad things happen, we can overcome it. Kids learn that a lot, whether it's in their social interactions with people. Kids learn this a lot, whether it's in sports. I always say the biggest thing that keeps people from learning resilience is the reset button on the video game. Because so many kids play video games, things don't go the way the kid likes to play the video game. They just want to hit the reset button. I'm like, that is totally detrimental to learning resilience. Resilience is learning, okay, something bad happens. How do I develop a strategy to overcome this? The reset button is like the worst option. And so it's just a little personal, something I've always thought about when it comes to resilience. So there's a great correlation between resilience as a protective factor. If you have that ability to be resilient, then that's a huge internal protective factor. It means you have the ability to care for yourself. It means you have the ability to seek sources of strength. It means you have the ability to overcome challenges and adversities that come in your life. And we're all going to have these kinds of adversities. It's one of the things that you ever hear about them talking about the helicopter parents type of parenting where they protect the child from all adversity. And the problem for the helicopter parent is down the road, your child hasn't learned how to overcome negative situations. And so there's in the world of helping the helicopter parent, they talk about setting your child up to succeed, but hoping they fail when the consequence is small. I'm going to say that again. It's setting them up to succeed, but hoping they fail when the consequence is small. And the reason that is you want them to learn to fail when the consequence is small, not when the consequence is big. If your child never learned how to swim, they fall off a boat and they drown. Well, that's a big consequence. You don't want them falling off the boat. But a situation where if the child hasn't tied their shoes and they trip and fall and they scratch their knee, well, maybe they learn, you know what, I need to tie my shoe. That is the consequence being small, and the child learns, oh, you know what, I need to be resilient, I need to tie my shoe, I need to take more time to do this. So that's just a day-to-day example of if you're overprotective of a child and you tie their shoe for them every time when they're 11 or 12 years old, then they're never going to learn to hey, I need to do this for myself and overcome that. It may not be the best example, but it's the one that jumped to my mind. Last piece I'm going to touch about on this is discipline. Natural consequences, restitution, earning extra privileges, behavior contracts. There's lots of different things we can talk about, and there'll be time in the questions afterward to talk about discipline. One of the big pieces about discipline is make sure that it's age appropriate. Make sure discipline is going to change as your child gets older. And make sure you have a lot of different tools in your tool belt as far as discipline. Some parents get stuck in the mind of, I'm only going to take things away. That's the way I'm going to handle discipline. Well, that may work some, but what you can also do is you can add consequences. You can say, okay, you know what? Once you do the dishes, then you can have this privilege back. Also, when you're doing discipline, thinking about consequences in shorter time frames, because if you give your child a real long time frame of discipline, as a parent, it's real hard to follow through with that long time frame. So trying to use natural consequences, let them learn from the natural world. If they do something, try to find out what would be the way to pay back restitution for that. Try to find out how do they make up for it? Like, what's the best way to make up for it? Because consequences shouldn't really be arbitrary. They should fit with what was damaged or what rule they broke. Also, a big part of discipline is earning extra privileges. You know, you want your child to see, hey, if I do good things, I get good things. So it's kind of like the stick and the carrot, right? It's like the analogy that's always been used. Like, you know, are you a person who's motivated because I don't want to have bad things happen to me? Or am I want to be motivated because I want the carrot, I want the good things? So, you know, not just, hey, there's going to be consequences for when I screw up, but hey, these are the privileges I can get when I do well. Writing down behavior contracts, making them short. You know, for elementary school kids, 3-4 days is a long time, you know, with a reward at the end, or maybe a week, depending on the age of the child. You know, and letting them have some choice. It's about, if you're doing a behavior contract, what the reward would be. So those are some things to think about when it comes to discipline. We're going to have some time to talk afterward and ask some questions, and I look forward to hearing from you. So with that, I'm going to try to get us to that part of the presentation.